This never happened to me before. Really? Yeah. Oh, man.
The Twisted Metal TV show just came out today on Peacock, and I just spent the first half of the day binge watching it. I don't really know anything about Twisted Metal. I didn't really have much expectations going into this show. I did do 2 trailer reactions, I believe, leading up to this release. And with each of those trailer reactions, I got more and more excited to watch it because I was surprised how fun the show looked. But besides that, I went into the show having no expectations, but I just watched it. I'm gonna review it for you guys, give you my first impressions, my first thoughts on the first 5 episodes. The first season is 10 episodes long. I just watched 5 of them, so again, this review is based on the first half of this season. It is going to be spoiler free. I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys. And depending on how this video performs, depending if enough of you in the comments let me know that you're interested, I will do a spoiler discussion and I will do a part 2 review discussing the back half of the season. But anyway, let's talk about season 1 of Twisted Metal. But before I do that, you should consider subscribing. I talk about TV shows all the time on this page. I do trailer reactions, I talk about movies sometimes, but I also talk about video games all the time, and Twisted Metal is based off of a video game, obviously. So again, consider subscribing if any of that seems interesting to you. But again, let's talk about Twisted Metal. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but I'm going to give you a basic setup of what Twisted Metal is about, the basic plot. Society essentially collapsed decades before this show begins. And there are some cities that are still standing, but they're surrounded by walls and they're basically their own closed off communities. But the vast majority of the United States is just no man's land. It's a wasteland. It's an apocalypse. It's a free-for-all. And existing within that wasteland are what this show calls milkmen. They're essentially drivers who go from one community to another to deliver goods and products and so on and so forth. And Anthony Mackie plays the lead character named John Doe, and he's basically given a task, and if he completes this task, he's going to be gifted sanctuary in New Seattle, I believe. And that's essentially the setup for season 1 of Twisted Metal. And as he's going along his journey, as he's trying to get his mission done, he runs into new characters, new territories, new enemy groups, new friends, and new foes. And the basic setup for this TV show I find really fun. I'm actually a big fan of TV shows where each episode is essentially a new event happening, a new story to unfold. Obviously with connective tissue to make there be an overarching narrative throughout the whole thing. But I really love it when a TV show gives you something new with each episode, where you're not really sure what's going to happen next, what new character is going to be introduced. It's not my favorite type of narrative for a TV show, but I do appreciate shows like this, especially when they're lighter, especially when they don't take themselves too seriously, which Twisted Metal does not. And honestly, that's my biggest positive I have to say about Twisted Metal, is it very clearly does not take itself seriously. It's just a fun show to watch. The world is interesting enough, the action is good enough, and the characters are surprisingly deep enough to carry you through it, but it's nothing that you have to get super invested in. It's nothing that you have to pay attention to every line of dialogue. In my opinion, it's nothing where you're going to be hooked too deep into any character arc, or any plot point. And a lot of people will probably find that disappointing, that it's not the most deep show on streaming right now, but personally, for me, this is a positive. Don't get me wrong, I love my deep shows. I love The Last of Us, I love House of the Dragon, I love shows where I have to pay attention to every single facial expression, every single character action, every single line of dialogue. But between those shows, I really enjoy shows like Twisted Metal, where I can just sit down, turn my brain off, and know that I will be thoroughly entertained throughout the whole runtime. Anthony Mackie plays a really good lead character, in my opinion. Again, they give him just enough depth, just enough of a character arc to make you feel like you're watching something of substance. Same with the supporting cast around him. The lead villain, I believe his name is Thomas Hayden Church. Correct me if I'm wrong. He plays Sandman in Spider-Man 3. I really love his performance in this show. He is the perfect type of villain for this narrative, for this plot, for this style of show. And obviously Sweet Tooth is just so entertaining whenever he's on screen. Every line of dialogue, every time his character slaughters someone, it's just so fun. Believe it or not though, as of episode 5, my favorite character is probably Stu. I don't know this actor's name, but he was also in the Netflix TV show Love, and I really liked him in that show, so I'm glad to see him in this, because I haven't seen him in anything in quite a while. I will say though, watching the first 5 episodes, I started to get nervous because as episode 2 was ending, as episode 3 was progressing, and especially with episode 4, I felt myself in fear that the enjoyment factor of this show was going to get diminished, and it was going to get diminished fast. Where the novelty of a show like Twisted Metal would be really fun for the first episode and a half, but then that novelty wouldn't be enough to carry me through without a strong narrative, without strong character moments. But luckily, when episode 5 ended, going into the second half of the season, a lot of things happen that's shifting the dynamic of the show, shifting the dynamic of our characters, shifting the dynamic of the plot, that I'm sucked in again. I'm hooked again. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to review the second half of the season. It's going to really depend on how this video performs, but me, on a personal level, I can't wait to get this video edited and out so I can continue watching. I am hooked. The set design for this show is also really, really fun. Again, society essentially collapsed decades ago, but this isn't a Walking Dead level of apocalyptic design in the world. It's not like The Last of Us. It's very much like how a video game in the PS1 era would adapt a post-apocalyptic wasteland, if that makes sense. It's very clean, it's very colorful, it's very poppy, which I enjoy, and it fits perfectly again for this style of show. Like there's a moment where they go into a theater and there's still like buckets of popcorn and soda laying around. It's just dumb, but I enjoy it. Anyway, have you watched Twisted Metal? If you have, are you enjoying it? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't watched it, do you plan to watch it? Let me know why or why not, because I'm interested. I'm curious. I don't know the reach that this show has. Once again, consider subscribing if you liked this video. I talk about TV shows, movies, I do trailer reactions, and I talk about video games a lot. Thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.